the summer. But I do want to let you all know that Anna's not going to be here, and so Jennifer and Kevin are going to be holding down the fort on motions. So please, when you make a motion or a second, could you please mention your name so they're not trying to jump up and figure out where your name tag says? Wouldn't mind doing that? That would be awesome too. Thank you.
Better if a weird name like me just hold it up.
I'm hoping to see
Just well.
Loud
that's not a
Okay, does everybody have their microphones on?
weird Baker Parker or
Yes.
Parker
Okay.
or whatever. I'm just making fun. That's not a weird name. Oh yeah.
There you go.
It's English.
I had to relook off, but I didn't think it was Parker. I was like, oh no, that's an A.
Spreadsheets.
Because we can't get it done.
I don't see anything crazy in
See
that.
that? Maybe that's where Rachel went. Rachel went to get something.
This thing was gonna take
Okay,
17
let's get
months just to do
started.
a study
You
on
should
it.
have some handouts, the 2040 roadway plan draft in front of you.
Had been done for years to big open. Yeah.
We'll make sure you get, and Vince, you need some as well? Okay, thank you.
Anybody need a packet?
Okay, Jennifer, Kevin, I'm presuming that the agenda hasn't changed? Okay, as far as you know. Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we do have a quorum, and I'd like to ask anybody in our audience to please introduce themselves, so if you wouldn't mind standing up.
Hi, I'm Julie Ott with League of Women Voters.
Athena Rowe with the League of Women Voters. Thank you.
Victoria Chavez, El Paso County.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to go ahead, and the consent agenda includes our agenda for today, as well as the minutes. If you have any additions or corrections, we'll pull them out of the consent agenda. Otherwise, I'd like a motion.
Motion to approve Welling Park.
Welling,
Second, Roger Armstrong, League of Women Voters.
okay, thanks, team. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you. We'll go ahead and proceed. Are there any public comments? No? Okay, I'm going to go ahead with the July Board of Directors report, and I'm telling you, this is my take on the report. And an unsolicited comment was that meeting went forever. So, no comment there. But I'm going to tell you what items that we would have an interest in. It was interesting, there was an action item that had to do with reviewing, there's a methodology and a structure they're trying to adopt or review, look over regarding proposed salary changes. So they are looking at that, and they will, based on that, they will eventually approve a new structure and methodology.
Are we going to get paid more?
I think we'll get a percentage raise of what we're making now. What do you think?
Actually, it's not an increase. Right now, we have a structure where there's a salary range, and at some point, the board capped that salary range at the midpoint. So there's like an artificial salary range. Mountain States Employers Council did a whole salary survey, which all our member governments do on a periodic basis, make sure that we're not being paid more or less than what the market says we should be paid. And so it's a combination of updating the salary ranges as well as the structure, and right now there are no dollars attached to this structure.
Right, like I said, they're going to approve structure and methodology as they go forward.
So no $1 million bonus for me yet.
Let us know when that happens. Okay, the other thing we talked about was in the reports area, the priority list, which we have discussed. I'm going to skip down. Actually, they had very much the same discussion we did regarding the projects that aren't currently funded, but if money falls from the sky, that we would put on our priority list. And there was a big discussion about I-25 and US 24. And the TAC had, if you recall our discussion, the TAC had taken on shifting a big portion of the dollars to US 24. Well, actually, the board mentioned that they'd rather see more equitable funding, very similar to what we discussed. So just an FYI for you. If the money becomes available, and if it does, y'all be pretty quick to know. The other thing they talked about was the stack is changing some. 3 issues that they're looking at are the funding. There's going to be a significant role change, likely change in membership, and it's very much an uptick from not just a policy group, more towards an implementation type of body, and so it's going to have increased scope. So when I hear more about the details of that, and if any change in membership as far as our local representatives, I'll let you know. Regarding the military, this meeting was held right after over 1,200 new cadets flew in. Classes have started, and by the way, Tim McGraw is going to be at the Academy on September 17th. I thought that was a key fact.
Yep.
At Peterson Air Force Base, mostly because we fly Civil Air Patrol and Aero Club, all the planes were wiped out, destroyed. Not the CAP airplanes. We had ours in a hangar, but all the Aero Club airplanes were lost. Pardon?
And get us for insurance.
Yes. But that's another story. 70% of the homes out of Peterson Air Force Base are severely damaged. 314 government vehicles, 2 C-130s, buildings, the airport, millions of dollars from that storm. So, there was a comment regarding the joint land use group. I shared with them that we had volunteered a couple of folks for the Santa Fe Trail study. But there's an increase in funding. I don't have any further information on that, do you?
Yes, the scope will be increasing to include Schriever Air Force Base, and that comes with additional dollars and additional time frame.
Okay. And I think another interesting report was from the Area Agency on Aging. There's $2.2 million that go to local service providers. There's some comprehensive planning. One of the things that's been a dilemma, especially for seniors and those that need, transportation support, are the coordination of people getting rides. There's Fountain Valley, there's Silver Key, and they aren't all on the same page. And the way the funding gets distributed is different, so it's kind of tricky. So they're going to work together to get a unified type of call center eventually. And the first step is software, working on software that makes sense and a serious upgrade. Integration of those so the person's getting the best service from the best provider for them. And then a single location. They're discussing some HIPAA concerns as far as privacy goes, but they're working through those. Discussion about the critical freight corridors, discussion on 24 East and 94 East. So it was very much the same discussion that we had. The advantage that we have is we tend to meet the end of the month, and then I listen with them on the second week, and sometimes we hear about it before it's at the board. So, any questions? Okay, we're on to the next El Paso County Major Transportation Corridors Plan. Victoria?
I've come to hear from you. You're not going to talk today.
Turn your microphone on anyway.
Really, I talk so loud.
Thank you.
Okay, now I'm going to try not to talk loud. Okay, I'm here to talk a little bit about our major transportation corridor update. We are working on that, hoping to have this done by the end of the year. This plan helps us look at our critical future transportation needs. We look at a vision for the future. We put together a list of needed improvements. We will look for a funding plan that will help us build the system. We are looking at multimodal improvements at this time, and we are also using this plan to look at long-term right-of-way preservation needs. Our development services people use this plan to say, okay, you need to sit your buildings back this far, or you need to dedicate this much right-of-way because we're going to build a road here in the future. We also use this plan as a basis for our countywide road impact fee. It becomes basically it becomes the overall number that we divide up by the number of trips that developers then come in and build homes and produce trips, and they have to pay a cost per trip to defray the cost of their impacts on our road system. So this plan becomes the basis for that road impact fee as well. And this is why we do a different plan, and we don't just rely on PPACG plan, as great as it is. We look at bigger things, as in more area. We look at more roads, and we look at more funding sources than just federal funds. So there's a variety of ways that you can participate in our plan, and to help inform me on how to best meet your needs, you can go visit our website. It's www.epcroadplan.com. You can sign up for updates to get emails, which I think I've already signed you all up on, so you're stuck with me. We have a variety of online surveys that you can take. There's one up there right now, and there will be a new one up very, very soon. You can contact me at my email address, or you can attend a Highway Advisory Commission meeting. They are on the third Wednesday of the month at 9 o'clock at the Regional Development Center at 2880 International. You can also like us on Facebook. So I'm going to really shut up at this point and let you take a look at the maps that you have in front of you, as well as the list. The first map is basically our draft roadway plan, so it serves as what functional classification are we looking at for this road in the future, and how many lanes do we think this road needs to be. And then the second map is our improvement map. So this basically says, based on our roads that we have right now, what do we need to do to get them to that functional class map? And there are a lot of improvements, as you can see, listed on there. And then those improvements are referenced with a number and color-coded, that you'll be able to find them then on the next page. So these improvements, a lot of these improvements are going to be what we include in our calculation for the road impact fee. Question? Okay, I thought I saw the question, and I guess I didn't. So at this point, I'm going to just turn this over to you and ask you to tell me what you think we may have wrong on here, what you think we may need in addition. Do you think we have things right? Are there certain roads, based on where you go and you travel, that you're going to say, you know, you really needed an improvement there, and I don't know why you don't have one? So I would love to hear some thoughts. Vince?
Schuper Burgess, is it going to go out to Meridian at some point?
Do you know, I really tried to make that connection, and there is just not a good way to do it considering the current land use. So we're really looking at Rex being that connection that goes, that continuing the Burgess and the two forks of, what is it, Goodson and some other road name that I can't remember off the top of my head. But I really wish I could put a better connection through there, but I just haven't figured out how to do it yet.
One quick question.
Yes?
On the volumes, is that per day? Is that expected per day?
Okay. That is going to be the expected 2040.
2040, okay.
Correct. And I'm just taking notes, so go ahead and scream out when you can.
Well, Victoria, personally, I will have to noodle on this.
Oh, absolutely. This is literally hot off the presses. It's not even on our website yet. There will be, it will be on our website in the next week or so, and you'll get one of those email blasts, and you'll be able to go onto the website and put any comments on that you don't have right now. But it's literally brand spanking new, so I wanted to get it in your hands and let you take a quick look at it, and if you saw anything egregious off the top of your head, I'd love to hear about it.
just curious as to, is this a wish list? Or is this likely to be funded? Or-
We do not have the same sort of fiscal constraint requirements that PPACG does. So we are going to look at what's needed, and as we go along, I use this list to figure out what kind of grants I need to apply for. We use it to develop our PPRTA capital lists. It will be used, a lot of times developers will build these improvements, so we need to have them on the books so that they're required to build them. So it is not just a county-funded only plan. And it does not have that fiscal constraint on it. So we may never have enough money to do this, but we'd like to plan for the future.
What's the red typeface?
I'm sorry, the what?
Red typeface?
The red, they were just changes that the consultants had made from the last version of things that I needed fixed. Yes.
Bob Baker. Were there any principles that you set forth, like moving traffic from east to west and vice versa, more than north to south, or?
We have a lot of principles. One of them is safety, one of them is maintaining the existing, one is planning for future growth. So we had a couple of big principles like that. We then take a look at what the model says, and we come up with that needs assessment, so the red, yellow, green on the map that says whether or not the capacity, the expected future road number of trips is going to be over what that road can handle. And then we take a step back and we go, okay, does that make sense? Do we need more east-west connections here? Do we really think this growth is going to happen? So we really put a very technical, moderated look on what the model says based on what our land use planners are seeing, their applications that are coming in, the growth rates that are really occurring. And then we take also a very strong look at our public comments. And we have added, a bridge, for example, on Howells Lane. There's one little spot where that road is not connected, and it just needs a bridge. So somebody commented, put a bridge there, and then I don't have to go all this other way. And so we looked at that, and we modeled it and said, you know what? We don't have to do this improvement here if we make that connection there. So we will take a look at those things, too. But some of the basic things we look at are the number of trips that are expected to be on there and how many trips we think that road can handle. And then the other big thing that we look at is safety issues and multimodal. So does it have shoulders, which I will admit a lot of our roads don't have shoulders. I know you're shocked. So we look at that, so that safety aspect for the multimodal perspective, which is where a lot of our rural road upgrade category comes from. That's just, fixing that farm road that was built, that was put there 100 years ago that we threw some pavement on. So fixing those are something that we look very strongly at. And then the other thing we look at a lot is what is our military need and where do we think the economic generators are going to be. So we want to get people from where they live to where they need to work. Vince.
In the past, the super slab was a project that had been considered. I-25 is the only corridor we have in the state. Denver has a bunch of bypasses around Denver. Is there any discussion at all about, reopening the discussion on the super slab or the greenway or whatever they were going to call it out east to move some of that traffic out away from downtown?
I have not gotten any comments that anybody would like to see that. We do use what we're calling Briargate, Stapleton, Curtis to Bradley as sort of our loop around Colorado Springs. It doesn't get you to Denver, though. You still have to get back onto I-25. With your question, can I assume that you would like to maybe plug for a bypass or a different route to Denver? I knew that. Let me write that down.
Later about that, too.
Okay.
Well, the super slab was far more than just a highway. I mean, it was transmission lines for gas, electricity. I think there was even a train thrown in there. So I don't know if Vince is talking about the whole concept, because that was really large.
I'm just curious, as an aside as well, will some of these roadways have, and since we don't have a lot of shoulders, which I noticed because cyclists are really, that's a dangerous.
It's right down Woodman Road.
So is there some plan to add cycling lanes to things that look like clear paths for those who are cycling to work?
Our plan is really to look at multi-use shoulders. So a very wide shoulder that you could use to cycle in, to walk in, to to walk your dog with, or to pull over in case you have an emergency. So whatever alternative use you may need, you'll have a space to do it. Welling.
Just one question, when I see traffic volumes, is that total volumes both directions on that structure, or is that maximum traffic volume in one direction?
It is both directions, and those are for 2040, so that's the projected future.
Yeah, no, and I see the current too, I was just curious, so have you taken into account the traffic flow from the standpoint of, people coming in and going out, like I said, in the afternoon?
Mostly, when we do more detailed corridor studies of a single roadway, when we're looking to do an improvement, that's really when we'll start pulling out the peak hour stuff. This is more of the 10,000-foot view, and we mostly look at the ADTs.
Any other questions for Victoria? And she has left contact information for you to make any other suggestions,
Absolutely.
recommendations, changes, things from your constituency.
And yes, please.
When is it at regional, what day do you meet and how often?
It is the third Wednesday of every month at regional at 9 o'clock. All right, please feel free to email me or drop other notes that you may have on our website once this gets live on the website, but look for it soon. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
Okay, 2017, 2022 TIP administrative change.
Hello, everyone. Kevin Reyes, Transportation Planner at PPACG. So today we have an administrative change to the 2017-2022 Transportation Improvement Program. And it comes to us in 3 different parts. And let me see if I can pull it up here. What's going on here? There we go. Oh, is it? Okay. You want it? Yeah. I'll go ahead and start going over it. So the first part comes to us from the Colorado Department of Transportation. And if you guys recall, back in Amendment Number 1 and Amendment Number 2, we received new funding totals because of the FAST Act in STP Metro, TAP, and CMAQ. And as part of that, we had to move some projects around in order to keep the TIP fiscally constrained. So we had one more project we had to kind of play with in order to keep the TIP fiscally constrained, and that was Charter Oak Ranch Road. And so what we did was basically we just moved the funding around into different years, but we didn't reduce the funding and we didn't change the funding category. We just changed the years. So that's why we don't have to do this as an amendment. We just do this as an administrative change. So I can show you exactly what we did with that. Thank you, Rachel. Okay. So here's the Charter Oak Ranch Road project. So if you look at the bottom here, you can see the old numbers for this project. You can see that it has funding in 2019. So what we had to do is we moved the money out of 2019 and split it into 2018 and 2020, and also into 2017 as well. And so basically we just took the money out of 2019 and split it amongst those other years. So that was the first change we did for the TIP. The second change, also from CDOT, is for the Sand Creek Trail Palmer Park to Constitution project. So the end of MAP 21 meant that enhancement funding had expired, and so CDOT made that money whole by trading it out and putting it on the Sand Creek project. So I can show you exactly what we did there as well. So the Sand Creek project, you can see in the old numbers. For the rollover section, for 1 second here. So for the rollover for federal enhancement funding, it has $186,000. And so what we did was we bumped that up to $593,000. The other numbers that we changed, CDOT informed us that those were incorrect, so we just updated those in the tip. But the reason that we don't have to do this as an amendment either is because it's in the rollover year. And so that means that basically it's just an administrative change. And so that's the first part of administrative change, number one. The second part comes to us from the EPA. So the EPA informed us that the air quality conformity language in Appendix C of the tip is not up to date, and they really like the way we had the language in Chapter 15 of the 2040 Long Range Transportation Plan. So they asked us to basically update the language in the tip to be more reflective of the language in the 2040 Long Range Plan. So all we did was basically change the air quality conformity language in Appendix C of the tip to be more consistent with Chapter 15 of the Long Range Plan. And then the last part of administrative change, number one, comes to us from El Paso County. So El Paso County has requested an administrative change, administrative roll forward of funding for this water mitigation project. It's I-25 at Northgate. The roll forward consists of $1 million state RPP and $1,185,000 in local funding. So let me show you what we did with that one. Okay, so here's the project. And so as you can see in the old numbers in the rollover, there's no funding there. And in the new numbers, we put $1 million for the state funding, and then the local is $1,185,000. So those are the three different parts of administrative change, number one. Do you guys have any questions over these changes? Yes, sir.
Kevin, Bob Baker, moving these around like this, these have not gone to bid at this point in time, is that correct?
Which project are you talking about?
Particularly Charter Oak Ranch Road.
Yeah.
It has gone to bid?
Oh, is Victoria, I'll let Victoria answer that question for you.
We do have a contract right now for the design of the project, but we do not have a contract out for the construction yet. So this piece of it has not been bid.
Victoria, when you move out another year, 2019 to 2020, I mean, what do you expect in inflation cost going out another year with $2 million?
We just don't know. They've been anywhere between 5 and 30%, depending on what material you're looking at. We really didn't have any choice but to move this out of 2019, as 2019 was overprogrammed, and there wasn't enough federal money for us to do it in 19. So we moved some of it forward so that we could get started on it, and we are working right now with Fort Carson and what my friend Rick Orphan at Public Works calls Big Army. So we're working with Fort Carson and Big Army, so headquarters, to come up with the $6.3 million of DAR funds. If we get those in, we're going to be able to do some other switching and flopping of this money so that hopefully we can construct this project earlier rather than later.
The other thing that I was somewhere I was looking at the definition of fast, and does Charter Oak Ranch Road fit the fast definition for the use of dollars?
It does. It has been reclassified by Federal Highways to be an urban major collector. So it does now meet the requirements to receive federal funding. We just did that earlier this year, actually. Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions?
The only thing is, I'm presuming, based on her most recent conversation there, that it's not like the contractor or the project just dead stops the project for that year, true?
For Charter Oak Ranch Road?
Yes.
I believe it doesn't stop. I'll let Victoria answer that again.
I don't know a single contractor that's going to stay on for free, so.
Absolutely. It is not dead stop because we have a separate pot of money that we are using for the design. So we got that Tiger grant for the design of the project, so we're using that right now to get it designed. Once we have it designed, we'll put a bid out for the construction of it, hopefully that we've gotten all the funding for it, and then we'll go forward from there. We have a little bit of planning to do on this one before it's actually constructible and we have all the money for it. But once we have that design number, we'll be able to have a better conversation with the federal government and the Army to say, look, this is how much we need to fill this gap.
So is the design being done and then just going to be shelved until you have the money for construction?
Well, because we're doing it right now, and we'll be finishing it right up about the time where we get this money, what we're going to do with the 2018 money is to buy right away and do utilities. So we'll start with that aspect of it until we can finish out the rest of the construction funding. So it is not stopping.
So where is the design at this point?
It is at about 80% right now.
Okay, so your OPCC should be fairly accurate?
Okay, you've just gone way over my head, and we get back into the engineers and the design group for that.
The
So.
opinion on probable construction cost by the engineer.
Oh, we don't quite have that yet. We are like this close to that.
So what I'm asking is, I'm wondering, are these numbers reflective of those values, or?
No, this is still our planning guess numbers.
Okay, so this is really, to explain to everyone, it's just kind of shot in the dark, is what these numbers really.
It's our best educated guess.
Sorry. Okay, yeah. Okay. So like 60%, did you guys get a value, or?
I am sure they did. I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
Okay, because I think that would be nice for us to know, like something a little bit more, relevant in the sense, and if you're already at 80% design, next month you should be probably at pre-final, correct?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
We're moving right along with this, and I know that Alyssa, our project manager, has been bugging the contractor for getting that final number because I've been pushing her for it so that I can have those conversations with the Army.
Okay. All right, so that's.
No.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions on any of these?
All right, thank you guys. Yeah. Thank you. This setup. Great.
Good afternoon, Craig Casper. As we discussed last month, CDOT is in the process of developing a 10-year development program and a subset of that 10-year program of priority projects. At TAC last month, we thought we had an earlier deadline, so the TAC made a recommendation. The two projects everybody agrees that the projects that are on our priority list are the right projects in a general sort of way. At the TAC, they had a discussion, and I-25 from Monument North to Castle Rock, even though it's not in our area, is extremely high priority of our region. It's basically our main street serving our region. So the TAC made a recommendation to put $5 million, change the initial distribution of funding to put $5 million on US 24 West and $45 million on I-25 North. Before the CAC meeting last month, we found out that the deadline was actually a month or two after what we thought it was, so we did not ask you all for a recommendation. You had a discussion about those issues. And then we had the similar discussion at the board, and the board after discussion, thought that US 24 West and I-25 North should be about balanced $25 million each. There's a $50 million between those two projects pot. The TAC had gone 5 and 45. The board you didn't make a recommendation. The board had a discussion, said 25 seems right. So what CDOT sent to the Transportation Commission was $15 million on the US 24 West and $35 million on I-25 North. That's what went to the Transportation Commission from CDOT.
Based on?
That's what they thought was better. So now we're going back through, at the TAC meeting, the TAC affirmed CDOT's $35 million split, and we are here now to ask you what you all think as a recommendation.
Well, that's a good question.
Does it matter what we say?
Based on what happened between the board and what CDOT did, no.
We ought to support the board.
The board is, of course, interested in your recommendation.
I'm very happy to see the number for 24 go up. And I hope those who are pulling for I-25 improvements can understand that we're thrilled to be considered, those of us who've been on the 24 corridor.
You did read the bottom of that. Anecdotally share with the board that based on our discussions, we pretty much agreed with what they said. And this was, we didn't affirm anything, but we pretty much agreed that a more equitable split of funding was the way we felt, based on the discussion. So if you all have further comments right now, this is the time to bring them up.
I actually do have one additional thing I forgot to say. Something that's actually, to me, of equal importance to the split of money is, right now, DRCOG has I-25 in their plan, but I will read exactly what it says. Expand capacity with managed lanes from Monument to Castle Rock, as outlined in the PEL. So they're saying that they will expand the capacity as a tollway, add toll lanes, not do an actual study that could consider free lanes. And so I would say that is an equally big issue that they're only, from DRCOG's perspective, they're only looking at it as toll lanes.
Oh, that sucks.
So I would say that would be an equal to the split of funding.
COG, but not CDOT.
I'm not sure it will make a difference because the DRCOG has similar language in their portion of I-25 that connects to Fort Collins. So DRCOG is fully behind toll lanes as a way to expand capacity.
You know, if you put this to audio, there's this large sucking sound for the greater Denver area. I mean, it is amazing.
They get 60 to 70% of the funds in the Denver area, yes.
So, Craig, just clarification, so there'll still be free lanes, and then when the additional lanes
Would be
the
toll
managed
lanes.
toll lanes.
Right, yeah. So
So
look,
people can choose to still drive on the free lane.
correct.
Okay.
However, when there's an accident, what happens if you're going to go around an accident and you're on the non-toll lanes? Suddenly you are in the managed lane.
Yes.
Or you can sit, just like you would now.
Or you can
if
sit,
there's an
right.
accident.
Well, you go to 83 or 105,
Right.
just like now.
So we're looking for a recommendation.
Is there any assuaging that's going on to not make those lanes managed lanes, but rather just a third lane of traffic without toll?
Well, the study just kicked off. They've only had one internal meeting. The website is up, but there's no real information available on it. DRCOG, based on what they've done recently, will not put in their plan or tip a project that is not toll lanes to expand capacity. That's sort of a board policy that they have set, and they have been backing it up, as you can see by the I-25 North to Fort Collins. So.
Do they feel that that's I mean, just the cost of quote-unquote managing and operations of toll, do they think that's the most cost-effective solution?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Are they going to put toll lanes on loops around Denver?
Yep, that's how they're doing it, yep. They're only adding capacity as toll lanes.
Not the whole country, it's just.
Because the gas tax isn't keeping up, yeah.
It's a toll lane over there. What the hell is that doing right on I-25?
Question. Greg, so what's the funding budget for 24 and 25?
Of course, I couldn't get it. We didn't know.
That's what the board, and that's what the board sent to CDOT, yes. That is most recent from the board.
Okay.
And then,
I've got a question I just want to ask you. On the second chart, the big charts, It's on the second one, at the very top, it's the 4 one, it says High Speed. The reason I'm asking this, I'm familiar, it says expand 24 to 25 Ridge Road, or I-25 to Ridge Road, includes US 24 I-25 flyover. I'm familiar with the plan that was conducted back then, was it initially then a divergent diamond like Woodland, and we since then changed it to a single point diamond like Dartmouth Oz. And a recent change as of a year ago, we've actually shifted Highway 24 east, which was not in the plan. And so the question I have is, I wonder how up to date that Tier 2, $270 million is for the flyover. Because where we have the new bridge, that's where the flyover was supposed to take off from, and that plan was about 8 years ago, or 7 years ago. So I don't know if it's been updated.
CDOT is actually in the process of that, and a further compounding complexity factor is the floodplain in that along US 24 from I-25 west has actually dropped, and so they don't have to build up US 24 as much, so they think there's going to be some cost savings there. And so they're actually in the process of restudying that, or will be starting a process to restudy that in the next year or three. So that they, but CDOT is, yeah, they are, that is an ongoing,
Yeah, so on the flyover, I'm thinking, is that the old one from 7, 8 years ago, or has that been updated? I didn't know.
I honestly don't know, but I can find out.
I'd love to see their plans. Madam Chair, I'll say this, I like supporting our board.
It was nice to be able to say that in the last meeting. I think that's out of our hands now, but they voted that. But it was very consistent. I think because of our representation is fairly broad, as was on the board, that's why it's consistent.
And I guess further compounding the issue is we don't actually have a transportation commissioner right now to go to bat for us about that. Our commissioner resigned for health reasons a couple months ago, not been replaced, and so we actually don't have a voice right now to talk for us.
And that's Region
Yeah,
2,
and that-
correct?
Yeah, that's well, it's District 9. It's Commission District 9. District 9, which is,
Does it include Pueblo?
no,
It doesn't?
no, it does not. It's us, Central Front Range, and part of Eastern TPR.
PPACG, or
We can't speak. The commission rules don't allow it. So,
Is there an ETA on that?
actually, based on a conversation we had today, October, the month after this is adopted, we will have a new commissioner.
this was Nolan Trainer.
Yep.
I heard that. I heard the Regional Business Alliance submitted up to Denver or someone else without going through any elected officials here, and that brought some feathers.
Without talking to anybody.
I have a question on the CFI intersections on SH21.
Mhm.
Was there a study done that CFIs would work best in those
We've done-
intersections?
We've done a 10,000-foot level analysis of it. It looks like it will. CDOT has agreed to undertake actual detailed operations
Okay.
of that to see if they will work.
Okay,
um,
versus the grade separated
yeah, well-
intersections?
The grade, we can't afford grade-separated intersections, so it's,
Is this like a temporary solution, or someday you still want to
oh,
change your grade?
we still definitely want grade-separated intersections on there. That's what the EA cleared, but we don't have a way of paying for those.
So we're going to spend $40 million for kind of a temporary
Yep.
solution?
Yep, hopefully.
Okay, so we should kind of keep an eye
We have a
that in mind.
motion on the table?
Okay.
Welling, did you make a motion?
Should I?
Do you have a comment, Kevin?
No, I wanted to see if there was a didn't know whether we were discussing a
Well, there's a
motion.
recommendation here, and the recommendation, I'm just looking to make a motion to support the board. I would make a motion to support the recommendation of the board. Second.
Second? Okay.
Well, I'm Clark first.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Do you want to talk about the issue of the managed lanes at all, in addition to the supporting of the board?
You did hear the comments are reflected in
The groans here.
If you'd like to express what your thoughts are, if you want to recommend that we, as a consensus, tell them that we are either opposed or
That we'd like a
Stand
full
concept or-
analysis of options? That would be a recommendation I could make, is that you would like the PEL to examine a full range of options and not limited to the managed lanes.
Yeah, and not only that, but can we have Dr. Cog directly contact PPACG to discuss that?
No, I don't think we can make a motion to tell Dr. Cotton.
No, I mean, but it's a recommendation.
Okay,
Aren't they already in contact with each other?
we can.
The phone works both ways.
Rachel shared that they are going to bring this up again at the board. So if you have a recommendation or would like to share what our thoughts are, then could please somebody offer a motion to that effect? And maybe include the range of options with a leaning.
Question, Craig.
We could wordsmith it, but that's fine.
Would there be any effort, do you think, by the DOT to change any of the free lanes now between Castle Rock and Denver to toll lanes?
Only if they want to go to jail.
Okay, so there's no way.
That's against the law to do
Interstate
that.
highway?
Right, that's against the law. So
But other states are doing that.
they can't convert interstate free lanes to toll lanes. They can.
Just new.
Right, they can do only, all the new lanes can be toll.
Okay, would you like to offer a resolution? As a, and I just need a motion.
The first motion passed.
Pardon?
Do we need to
First
pass
motion
a
had
second?
to do with,
Information.
with the board. This one has to do with recommending to the board that they look at a variety of options to
Not just
manage
Not just
lanes
manage
and tollways, to increase the capacity of the I-25 corridor from Monument to Castle Rock.
So moved.
What you just said, yeah.
Second.
It needs to come from the floor. I can't.
What she said, I move.
Okay, and I second.
Okay, did you guys get that?
Motion by Kevin
I'm
Walker.
trying to get it actually, so I need somebody to restate that motion, please.
The motion by Kevin Walker.
Kevin Walker moves, okay, you can correct me, moves that we recommend to the board that they, well, it's not the board, it's really CDOT.
Recommend CDOT.
Recommend that CDOT look at a wide range of options.
A full range of options.
I've got it.
A full range of options.
Full range of options.
When considering increased capacity on I-25.
Right, well, I-25 corridor.
From Monument to Castle Rock.
You are so articulate.
You know, I don't know how you put in there, but I think we have a concern that the managed lanes do not deal with the capacity problem the way we would like to see information around that, I think.
Well, I used to do tollway planning, and in order for managed lanes to be successful, you have to have an acceptable level of congestion. So what you're saying, if you put managed lanes is we know we're not going to relieve congestion on this, we're just okay with a certain level of it to keep, otherwise, why pay if you can do it for free? So you have to get something out of driving in the toll lanes, which is more speed, save time. So then, basically, you're saying, okay, we will keep that road congested so that we can pay for ourselves on our toll lanes.
All right, California.
So the motion I have on the floor, ostensibly made by Mr. Walker, recommend to the board that CDOT look at the full range of options when considering increased capacity on I-25, and I have noted the concern that managed lanes do not adequately deal with the capacity issues. Welling, you were the second? Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you very much.
There you go. Thanks, Craig.
I have a question, because I think we discussed the transportation commissioner issue. Nolan Schreiner has been the transportation commissioner. He is the one that has, in fact, resigned for health reasons. So there is another name out there. Do you know who that
Well,
is?
there are a couple names that, the problem was the And so there was a big discussion at the board meeting. We usually leave off those discussions. But there was a big discussion about how those people get recommended and how they get approved so that what's going forward is one that everybody agrees that that person is appropriate. Or they submit 2 names and then allow them to choose one that may have the most experience or better fit for the community.
Well, is the board
Yes.
so bent out of shape about that circumvention that they might not consider a
No.
person who could be very qualified for posts?
No, they are considering all companies, though all the ones that were recommended. But there were 2 more that had been, that were interested, and it was never explored and never reviewed. And they were recommended by other bodies, so that's why.
Thank you.
Okay. Does that sum it up?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay, Rachel's going to be talking about the draft public participation plan, which was very well done.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Rachel Beck, Policy and Communication Manager. As Jen said, before you is our draft public participation plan. This is how we start our next long-range transportation plan process, which will look out until 2050. It does also, however, cover work products like the Transportation Improvement Program. So a number of us here put a lot of thought and research into this new version that you have before you. This is a little differently than how we've done it in previous years. And as you know, of course, this committee, one of your chief duties is overseeing this plan, both what this plan lays out and how it is executed over time. So the document in front of you needs to last for 4 years. And what we've tried to do here is to add a level of specificity so that you have an idea of what we plan to do while allowing some flexibility over the next 3 to 4 years to implement, depending on the resources that we have available. So I want to call your attention to a few things in here. The first is on page 4. We did a lot of research into best practices. We looked at some other plans in other communities, reviewed some research reports, and then we looked at feedback that was received from this committee as well as the Technical Advisory Committee during the past plan. So some of you may have still been on this committee when that feedback was given. If you weren't, you can review it there on the bottom of page 4, and it's really good input that we've tried to address. So then if you turn to page 5, and look at the strategies that we've laid out. That's where we talk about responding to a lot of that feedback. What we've learned, and when I say we, I mean not just here at PPACG, but throughout the community and even throughout the nation, is that the old ways of doing public involvement, which largely depended on public meetings, are not drawing the kind of participation that we want and need to make good and representative decisions. So, while we're certainly going to keep doing public meetings, open houses and things like that, we're really putting a lot more emphasis on ways that people can talk to us that are more convenient. And that means going to where they are, either electronically or in person. So we're looking at new tactics like online surveys, telephone town halls, interactive mapping, and things like that. And we're already seeing that draws a lot more public input than we would receive at a meeting. Another item there toward the end of the page is CAC members in particular in the past have requested that we try and boil down some of these complex planning concepts and data that we're presenting so that it's a little more concise and more visual. So we plan to use a lot more visualization tools, infographics and things to communicate that. Moving forward in the document, you can see that we've laid out a menu of tactics that we may consider and use as we're gathering public input at various parts of the plan or the TIP. And as I said, you can see those are quite varied to reach the varied kinds of people that we are looking to reach. And then moving on to page 9,
important part of good communication is evaluating what we're doing and making sure that it's working. So we've really expanded the evaluation section of our plan and come up with some metrics, both quantitative and qualitative, for all of these tactics. When the TAC reviewed this plan, they had two primary items that they wanted us to update. Federal Highways wanted us to strengthen the language on how we're going to reach out to minority and low-income and other underserved communities, so we have added that throughout the document. And then Mountain Metro Transit talked to us about a little bit about what their needs are when it comes to our outreach processes and what we do on behalf of transit. Those changes are not reflected in here yet and will be before the board meeting because Brian and I are meeting tomorrow morning to discuss that very topic. So you can look for that between now and the board packet. But this is what we are asking for your review and recommendations on. And then ultimately, we would like you to recommend to the board, if you feel this document is ready, to go out for a 45-day public comment period. That is a federal requirement, and so we put this plan out there and say, this is what we're planning to do to the public, and let them comment on that piece of it as well. And that reminds me, I apologize, I forgot to mention something that we plan to do on page 5. When we were talking about this internally and with Federal Highways and thinking through, how is it best to reach these various groups in the community, we kind of had a light bulb moment and said, well, why don't we ask them? And so one of the first things that we plan to do is to do a survey of the community and ask just that. What is the best way for you to get involved in this process? How do you want to hear about this kind of information? What is the easiest way for you to participate? Questions, comments?
First of all, let's have a motion and a second, and then we will do the discussion for Robert's rules. Okay, can I have a motion? Recommend, and then we can.
I make a motion recommending we.
Thanks, Alan.
Fran Pitaro, second.
Okay, thanks,
What?
Fran.
All right, I'm doubling as minute taker here. What is the motion, please?
To recommend your plan.
For 45-day comment
Recommend
period.
approval of the,
Okay, thank you.
Recommending, or are we actually approving?
recommend an approval right, for release. Yeah.
Okay, Jennifer, did you get that as well?
Rachel's still on it.
Ellen? Okay. Now we'll go ahead and people have discussions or comments. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've just got one little administrative thing that I can show you to, the language to clarify it, because it's
Okay.
not, something wrong there. And then just a couple of bullets, but I made my comments in the back, so I'll just give it to you. instead
Okay,
of
thank you.
taking everybody's time.
Kevin?
On page 4, you talk about simplifying the information, and you talked about that in your presentation. I always think it's important to say simplify it, but give access to the technical. Make it easy for them to go to the next level if they want to. So I don't think everybody needs it simplified, but you need to make it sure that they can also go and get it, the detail if they want.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. That is our plan. So we'll give you we'll do the journalistic pyramid style. Start with the overview, and if that's enough for you, great. And if not, you can go down another level and another level. That's particularly easy, of course, on the web now. We can link to various documents in more detail.
I did have two questions. One is, when I was talking to some people that I know that are interested in having public input, one of the things that they asked me was that, is there any way to pick up the phone and call and be able to leave some comments? I read this, I wanted to see this. And most of the people that I talk to are usually they're still working full-time and they're like crazy busy. But where can I call and leave a comment? There are other people that I know of that are part of the minority groups I've worked with, low-income groups that I've worked with before regarding health care. And not everybody has a computer, but darn near everybody has a phone, some kind of a smartphone. And even though they may be limited, to text and may not, surf a website or know how to get a hold of the website, there was a way to leave a comment. And actually, the discussion was about bus transportation. And I had that conversation. So that's something to consider.
That's a great point. We can add that.
Because Dragon now will, or a lot of other voice documenting types of software will easily convert it to text.
This is another minor, whoa, holy cow, administrative thing, but looking at your page on target audiences, and by the way, great, like, overall, really fantastic. I love that you integrated people with disabilities in transit. No, that's my heart. But target audiences, would you mind changing language? I think you had said representatives of people with disabilities and representatives of users of public transportation.
Mhm.
Could you do people with disabilities or their representatives and public transportation users or their representatives?
Certainly. We pulled that from federal regulations, but we are happy to use better language than the feds.
You are able to. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments on the strategy?
I don't know how we did this in the past. Remember reading stuff back years ago that didn't seem to make a lot of sense. But since Rachel's been here, this kind of effort has really been markedly, this is like going into the 21st century and doing the right things.
Well, thank you, Al. Wow. This was very much a team effort, though. I cannot take all the credit. And those two sitting behind you in particular, Jennifer and Kevin, had a lot to do with it.
It was very well organized and a smart, short verse rather than. Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the Title VI and Limited English Proficiency Plan. Jennifer?
Guess we'll scroll to it. Here we go. Okay, good afternoon, Jennifer Valentine, Transportation Planner with PPACG. So just a little bit of committee history as a refresher. You all did see this item back in June, just as an information and discussion item. We also took it to the TAC and the board as information items, and now it's coming back around for the review and recommend. So to be clear, we're basically asking for the same thing as with the public involvement plan, except the requirement is for a 30-day public comment period, but we're trying to keep it on the same schedule as the public participation plan. So we'll have this now, and then when that comes back around, this will also come back around. So a little bit of the content history in case you all forgot from June. So basically Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 states that any program or activity that's receiving federal assistance must show that it's non-discriminatory. So that's basically what these two plans do. They inform the public of their rights under Title VI and also generally encourage participation in the planning process, although our specific strategies are housed in the public participation plan. So these two plans are really just kind of a general overview of the requirements and doesn't get into the specific strategies. We have not made any changes from these two documents from when they were first approved in 2014 because Title VI of 1964 has not changed, and that's basically what it discusses. I think that is it.
Okay, can I have a motion and then, and a second, and then we can work on any discussion or questions?
I would recommend, the motion should be that we do recommend the board to approve the plan.
Actually, it's going out for public release.
Correct. So release for 30-day public comment is the...
And a second, please, Al.
I had another question.
Sure, go ahead, Bob.
I'm curious as to the volume of complaints in the complaint log that we have.
I, having been here for 6 months, I have no knowledge of complaints. Rachel, do you?
No.
As far as I know, I don't believe we've... Craig's not here. Ken has been here a long time, though, so...
We have had no complaints.
In how many years?
Thank you, Ken.
I've been here 23. Pretty amazing.
No complaints.
I
Yeah.
recommend we keep that.
We'd like to do that.
Yeah, but the flip side of no complaints is I wonder if the intended is just getting the information. Do they know that they can do that?
And that would be precisely my question is, how do we, as a policy, how do we assess how well information is getting out into the community? So groups, individuals have the opportunity to be knowledgeable enough to listen. How do we assess that?
Public participation plan. I mean, she lists, like, part of the public participation plan is the assessment of how specifically they're going through. So it's awesome that you actually have those measurements in there.
They said biggest piece now is they're going to be evaluating participation.
I'm looking forward to seeing what information we can call out of that process, because I think it's a significant part of what may have been missing before. Because there's no feedback at all, no complaints at all. You don't that's exactly the problem. You don't know enough about the process to know if it's an information gap or people don't know how to channel their comments, et cetera.
And in the public participation plan, under that evaluation section, I think it was in the right-hand column, we tried to include a lot of different ways of measuring how effective things are, not just how many people were reached, but, the types of discussions that were had, not just that we had 100 likes on Facebook, but what was the quality of the discussion. So I do think it's worth taking another look at how these two items relate to the evaluation and make sure that we have enough ways of measuring the success of those pieces.
Any other comments?
Try to generate a complaint.
No. Okay, all those in favor of releasing the document for public comment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Jim. Okay, item number 10, 2019-2024 Transportation Improvement Program.
Hello again, Kevin Reyes, PPACG. So we're getting ready to kick off our 2019-2024 Transportation Improvement Program. And as part of that process, we wanted to start establishing some policies early on just to kind of keep everyone on the same page and avoid any bumps in the road later down the line. So we've been kind of discussing amongst ourselves at PPACG some potential TIP policies, and we want to run them by everyone here as well. So we've narrowed it down to two potential policies so far. We want to get your thoughts on these. So the first one we're thinking about is making sure that projects submitted to the 2019-2024 TIP come from the long-range transportation plan. So the reason we thought of this as a policy is because the transportation plan, the point of that is basically it provides the foundation for transportation decision-making in our region, and by identifying our needs and our vision and our goals. And it's projects in the plan were approved because they will best achieve the regional goals and vision. So we think it's important that the TIP actually implement the plan so we can achieve the goals and the vision. So that was kind of our logic with this policy. So as you can see in your memo, we've outlined the pros and the cons that we could think of regarding this policy. So we want to kind of get your thoughts on this as well and see if you could add any pros or cons to this as well. The second policy that we have brought to you guys is providing a separate pot of money for small projects. Now, the reason that we thought of this as a policy is because in the past, my understanding is a lot of small projects have struggled to compete with larger projects during the TIP selection process. So we think that setting aside a pot of money within STP Metro would be a way of hoping small projects get funded. So we've been discussing amongst ourselves, and we were thinking of basically defining a small project as one between $0 and $300,000, both federal and local money. So basically what we're proposing is to set aside $600,000 federal and local money for the small project categories. This would be $496,000 federal money. And so what this would do is it would get us to basically get at least one small project done every year, or 2 small projects done every call for projects, if that makes sense. one other point about this is we want to make sure that this includes only projects that are doing the full scope of work and not just a particular phase, just to make sure that we actually get small projects in this category. Yeah, so those are the two policies that we're we're proposing to you guys, and we want to again get your feedback on the pros and cons that we've outlined here, and see what additional thoughts you might have about these.
Welling Clark, with regard to the separate pot for small and large projects, you designated a certain amount of money. What's the overall pot if I was going to compare the ratio of the large projects to small projects? Is it 50-50 or is it like 80-20 or something like that?
You're saying how much STP Metro is it taking? Is that what you want to know?
Basically, if we took all the projects together, and assuming the projects large and small are equally vital, what's the cost ratio or the amount of cost ratio for the amount of large projects compared to the small projects? And where I was going with that is if I ratio whatever the funding I get in, like if it's, say, an 80-20 cost, I have 80 go large, 20 go small, assuming that the projects are all the same priority level or something like that. I was just curious, do you know what that breakout is?
So you want to know what's the breakdown between federal and local match?
Well, no, not the match, the projects we have.
How many are large, how many are small?
Are you talking about in the current tip? Or for?
Well, what you're doing with the policy is a pot for small projects, the money. I'm just curious, what is the ratio, or how much money goes, or how much money is in for large projects and how much is in for small projects? Because we've identified those projects in our priority list.
In our priority list, you're saying?
Yeah.
Percentage of small projects?
Oh, I get you. Okay.
Wise.
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that. I can actually look that up for you, though.
That was just something, because if it falls on target with the amount you're setting aside, that's great. And do you want to have a set amount, or do you want to have a percentage amount based on, say, the large-small cost ratio?
That's a good point. That's something that we discussed as well. So basically, as I said, setting aside $600,000 federal and local would be setting aside $496,000 federal, which would be about 3% of the SDP Metro budget. So what we can do, as you mentioned, we can either have it be a set amount of money, or we can have it be a percentage. That's, again, something we want to get your feedback on as well.
Assuming everything is equal, if it's 3% of the total small projects is, of the cost relative to the, 100% of the whole. So that would match up. I just didn't know if you chose a set number, or is it disproportional to the total cost of large projects relative to the small projects?
Okay. Our logic with this number was just trying to get at least one project done every year. And my understanding is from the past that would be sufficient to get a majority of the small projects done. But
I have a question, Kevin, about you have a waiver because, I love it that we are planning forward. I think that it's visionary. But also, stuff happens. I mean, weird weather, dynamics and the land changes, that kind of stuff, that would be a call for projects. Does the waiver also apply to the smaller projects? If a project arose that was not on the 2040, because what you say here is that we want to just look at the projects that are in the 2040. If one of these small projects is not in the 2040, but arose because of changing either land conditions or the growth of the community, that kind of stuff, is there a way that the board could recommend a waiver for that particular project?
Yeah, the waiver wouldn't discriminate against the size of the project.
Okay. So it actually applies to both policies.
Exactly. Yeah. Whatever comes up, if it's some sort of emergency. I understand there was a big forest fire here in the past. No matter what the size of the project is, the waiver would be applied if it's a necessary project to get done.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. Another thing I would say, just my feeling is consistent with what Welling had to say as well, as a member, is that if you've got 100 projects on the table or on the 2040, and 20% of them are small projects, and have an impact to the people that they affect, a significant impact, then I would prefer you use the appropriate amount of money to address that situation.
Mhm.
Be flexible with the amount of money as opposed to locking down a specific amount of money, like 300,000.
Okay. But going off of that, would you prefer to have a percentage, or do you think it would just should be flexible every time we have a call for projects?
Well, I love flexibility, if
Mhm.
only because it allows the project to be submitted based on its merits, not on the dollars available. Because I have seen dollars available very much impact what got done,
Mhm.
as opposed to the impact of the project.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Inflation alone would work against that fixed amount, I would think,
Mhm.
changing it a lot.
Yeah.
I would think a percentage amount would be a
Mhm.
far better way to go and live with that going into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll write that down. Thank you.
And I guess if you're, sorry, keep on poking out from behind you. I'm trying to kind of clarify a little bit, but if you're looking at the percentage of small versus large projects in the current tip, it seems like part of this discussion is that small projects may not have applied in the past, knowing that they're going to get knocked out by larger projects. So I'm a little hesitant about using current tip numbers or percentages because we may not, some of those small projects may not even have been applied for because people knew they'd get knocked out. So it's just a thought to consider, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
And letting your call for projects reflect that, because something that I did
Right.
see, when United Way moved to a type, different methodology, and this was years ago, moved to a methodology that people actually came up with good small projects that addressed a need much faster than these massive projects that could compete.
Mhm.
So sometimes you're going to draw out being able to take care of immediate needs.
Mhm. Yeah.
Can I,
Any other comments?
I have a question. So the 50 to 300,000, why those numbers? Is there some, do you all have an idea what you're looking at and what small projects are on backlog that you're trying to address and will fit within that dollar range?
So our logic with this number was basically we wanted to try to get at least one project done every year.
Right.
And so, again, it was a little bit arbitrary. When we brought this to the TAC, they requested that we get rid of the 50 and just say zero to 300,000. But that was kind of our logic with
So
those
this
numbers.
is design and construction of
This is design, right-of-way, construction, all the phases. That way we would basically exclude larger projects that might just want to try to get one phase done, then would apply for this small pot of money. We're trying to just limit it to small projects.
Victoria, does the TAC feel like 300,000 is enough for most small projects that you have? To me, 300,000 seems like nothing when you're talking about design and construction, especially we're talking about in 2017 and on. I mean, so I think that's we're all kind of thinking the same thing: is why this dollar amount? And are we just doing sidewalk improvements and that's it, or are we talking about some other more in-depth projects?
Personally, I would defer, the TAC sort of deferred this to Woodland Park and Monument and some of those smaller communities. El Paso County, the city of Colorado Springs, we likely would not even apply for this kind of money. It's not worth the time, it's not worth the effort. You're going to spend way more money trying to spend, $300,000 of federal money than it's even worth. There's just too many strings, it's too costly. So personally, I don't really care much about the small pot. We're not going to apply for it. I'm doing a sidewalk project on Fontaine. It's over $1 million. We're doing one on Galley Road. It's going to be over $1 million. So we don't have small projects. So this pot of money is, I guess nice for those smaller communities, but I really would defer to Woodland Park Monument because it's just not worth our time or effort.
I guess my concern is because federal issues and what Victoria just stated is there's so much red tape and documentation. A lot of consultants and contractors won't even bother touching a project that's $300,000 or less because they will spend more money pursuing that project. And so what I'm concerned about is this provide a separate pot of money for small projects. We now have $300,000 that we never get to use because there's no project that will fit within the constraint of this
budget. So I do agree with you all on a percentage, but I think we need to relook at that number, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And so going off of that, if the money doesn't get used, it would go back into the general pot of STP Metro, so it wouldn't go to waste. But the TAC did recommend as well to raise it to 400,000, because they were more set on having the hard numbers. But that was one thing that they did mention.
Maybe you guys can take a look at your past small projects that you're trying to address in this pot of money and see on average.
That was also part of it as well.
Okay.
But there was definitely brought up to raise the limit as well.
Okay. Kevin?
I'm going to preface my comment by saying I'm a registered city planner. I learned how to do plans in college, but I don't like number one. And the reason I don't is because it says must. And by the time these plans get done, they're almost always out of date. And so this thing says it must come from financially constrained projects in the regional transportation plan unless it's waived or unless it's amended. And so unless we say stuff like that, I don't like to see hard and fast statements as policies that say they must do that, because at some point, someone's going to need a project, and someone who doesn't like it is going to say, yeah, but it says must. And so I wouldn't support the word must in here at all.
Okay.
Isn't that where the waiver come in?
Well, then what's the point of must? I mean, if you have a policy that can be waived or whatever, then what, I just don't like the word must in those things that when you just take it away later on anyway. But there's no answer to this problem.
No,
So
I guess
everybody-
what I'm looking for is.
So I just wanted to
structure,
pontificate about it.
adding some structure to the process.
It said
What they were trying to.
should, or say should come.
Well, we've run into this problem in the past with project sponsors submitting projects that were not in the plan, and the federal regulations specify that it should be consistent with the plan. And what we found was we've run into some trouble with that. So we're just trying to make a little bit more structure around that, which is why we mentioned the waivers, just to make sure if there's anything that's unexpected, we can get around that as well. Mm-hmm.
I have a question about a dialogue that we've had, Craig, for quite some time here. And that is that our days of money flowing to our region for projects like Cimarron, like Fillmore, like Powers, like, you can name a bunch of them. When you look at the priority list that we've seen, aside from however many miles it is, 3 miles to the top of Monument Hill, I mean, that's a $270 million project and has very little to do with Monument or Colorado Springs, our share of that. So are we going towards a time in CDOT's planning where we may want more emphasis on these smaller projects because we're not going to get the money for the large projects?
That is a really good philosophical question that I'm not going to have an answer to today. Right now, our current federal legislation says that we have to do a performance-based plan. We have to look at, identify our goals and objectives, figure out what then that translates into needs, and then identify projects that will meet those needs, and then come up with a fiscally constrained list of projects that we can actually fund that best meet the goals that we adopted at the first part. That's what we have to do now. The money that we have actually over the course of a long-range plan, even if we put it all into maintenance, we're not going to meet our maintenance goal. If we put it all into safety, we're not going to meet our safety goal. So what we're looking at is a series of trade-offs of what will make the future slightly less bad than it will be with other investment projects. Does that help?
Well, I'm with Tamara, it'd be $300,000.
Well, and
It seems like, I don't know, in this day and age, a $2.5 million project may be a small project. And I just don't think if we are entering a period where we have declining funds coming to us here in southern Colorado, how are we going to do the other projects that we might be able to better fund from the local level or whatever than these large projects that were just being pushed out of the way by larger metropolitan areas?
When we came up with the concept of the small projects, we looked at two key things. One is, what is CDOT uses Safe Routes to Schools, and what do they, when they do projects around for school safety, what's theirs, and it's about $300,000. The other thing we did is we talked to the local entities, the smaller ones, the woodland parks, fountains, monuments, how much money, and a $300,000 project means they have to come up with $60,000, and that's really, really hard for them. So we looked at what is realistic for the small entities to actually fund as a project, because they're getting shut out now because small projects don't score well, and they can't afford to do a big project. So.
Thank you. So Craig, don't go away yet. So based on what you just said, we're pretty much functioning on emergency need basis, because we're not able to maintain the infrastructure we already have.
Right.
And so as much as I like the idea of the plan, planning ahead and making sure projects that we're addressing are already on this, it almost seems like we're going to run into item 1.B more often than not, which is the emergency, rapidly changing conditions. So it almost seems like we have this plan, but really we're going to be doing tons of these waivers constantly, because you have, a big storm and a bridge gets washed out, and now suddenly that bridge may have not been on the list, but now it becomes a priority. So, I like this idea, but I'm just kind of struggling with kind of the justification. What's the reality?
Well, I'll give you a reality. In November, we adopted our long-range plan. In February, we did a call for projects. 19 of the 23 projects that were submitted were not in our long-range plan. In looking at the projects that were submitted and how they make progress towards our goals versus the projects, the cutoff for our long-range plan was about 300 points. You had to score 300. The projects that we put into the TIP scored in the 50s. They're not projects that are making progress towards our goals of our long-range plan.
Right, because we're trying to just keep up with the immediate need, right?
And
not being able to look in the, many years in the future.
And the purpose of the funds that come to PPACG is to make progress towards these goals. Mm-hmm. Local funds that's the immediate need is what those are for. That what comes to PPACG is supposed to make progress towards these national goals. Okay. Because they're not just PPACGs, Congress said you will do, freight, I'm not going to remember them all, congestion, crashes, and the projects that got submitted are not projects that make that, move towards that. Okay. That's what we're struggling with is 3 months after we adopted the plan, 19 of the 23 projects were not in the plan.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of like your personal finance. It's like we have money to buy a brand new car 5 years down the line, but we can't pay our electric bill today because that money is only being set aside for a car down the line. So I'm really struggling with that. That's why I'm struggling with this, and so I appreciate you guys bringing it up. And okay.
It is. It's a good discussion.
Well,
So.
and I guess personally, philosophically, after being a strategic planner, you plan for a reason, because you've made had a lot of thoughtful input. You've gotten, opines from a number of people and a number of studies, and then to submit projects at the last minute that totally disregard the former planning seems ridiculous to me. So I guess I'm for a thoughtful approach, but having it be a thoughtful approach that takes into account,
reality of the time.
And I've been giving this idea some thought because after the last TAC meeting when we proposed this, I had some conversations with some of the TAC members. And the projects that were scored for the 2040 plan were only scored based on how well they perform in 2040. So one of the things that we've been kicking around is, well, maybe we should score them in addition to how well they perform against existing conditions, 2015, and use the set of those two. Here's what we have needs now, here's how we have needs in the future, and some sort of way to meld that so that it's not just in the future. Because, and you've heard me say before, the only thing we know for sure about our small area forecast, which is what all of our future conditions are based on, is that it's wrong. That's the only thing we know for sure about it. That's why we do the 3 separate forecasts and score the projects 3 different times. But one of the things we have not scored it against is how do they score against existing conditions. And so that maybe we need to look at to try to make it more relevant to what the local entities are dealing with right now.
And what people's thoughts and opinions are.
Right. So, but it's not an easy nut to crack. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you both. Any other comments? Ready to move on?
All right, well, yeah, again, this is just a discussion item, so we're going to bring this back, obviously, in the next couple months and hopefully make a recommendation on. And if you guys have any additional policies that you think of over the next couple weeks, you can feel free to email them to us, and we can have those for discussion for the next CAC meeting as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Data Summit. I was saying, don't leave.
Good afternoon again. So we had, in doing the performance-based plan that we have to, we need data to evaluate both the existing conditions and then forecast future conditions of our region against the adopted goals. That comes with costs to gather that data. The GAO, Government Accounting Office, General Accounting Office, estimated that the average cost to TMAs, MPOs over 200,000 is about $400,000 a year to do this. So Congress gave us $25,000 extra a year to help with the data gathering. That's obviously not enough. $400,000 a need. Ours is going to be less because we are smaller, but it's still a large need. But we aren't the only ones that need data for transportation planning. The local entities, El Paso County, you saw that, and that they're doing a plan too. They also gather data for their plan. So we had the concept, well, sort of like we did with the Front Range MPOs in 2010 to do our household survey, why don't we work together to gather data? It could be, we might get better prices. We need basically the same data. Traffic counts, crash data, travel speeds, some fundamental transportation planning data. So let's work together. That we had an initial discussion 2 weeks ago now, and there's a general consensus that if we can figure out some way of gathering the same data, make sure that everybody gets what they need, but let's do it together. We can do that, and then possibly use some of the federal money. We've got some small pieces of money in our TIP now, that total I think around $200,000, and we've got $1 million set aside in 2020, which is where we'll need the data gathering for the plan after the one we're starting now. Let's work together, maybe use some federal money to gather the data that all of us need, local entities, state, CDOT, and PPACG, to gather that data, come up with a plan for that, get the MOAs in place so that we can do it all as one unit. And just wanted to let you know that that's one of the things we're trying to do to be efficient and effective in this new process. So.
Great idea. Collaborate to save some.
Yeah, and it's not going to be easy. I mean, like City of Colorado Springs, I don't know exactly. They use pavement quality index where we need international roughness index. El Paso County might use cracking and rutting for pavement conditions. So there's different. So we need to figure out, what do we do and how much does it cost to do what we all need. So, any questions?
Thank you. Good approach.
We'll see. Okay, thank you.
Questions? Okay, all right. Our next item is the critical urban freight corridors discussion.
Good afternoon. I'm Ken Prather, PPACG Transportation Planner. Last month I introduced the concept of critical urban freight corridors and critical rural freight corridors, and a new federal funding program that will provide $15 million a year roughly to Colorado to be used on freight projects on these freight corridors. PPACG, CDOT, and Denver Regional Council of Governments, DRCOG, must coordinate because we need to designate 80 miles of road as critical urban freight corridors. That's the cap, and so between the three entities, we've got to figure out who gets to designate how many, but it can't go over the 80 miles. So far, Dr. Cog has identified, let's see, 200 miles of Tier 2 corridors, 60 miles of Tier 1. Grand Junction's identified 6. In your memo, you see the mileage on the corridors we've identified. That's 14.7. And Craig has just gotten a request from that US 24 on the west side be added from I-25 to Woodland Park. Now, we can only designate what's inside our urban area, so that's probably about 6 miles just to the west side of Manitou Springs is all that we can designate. Don't know what Pueblo and North Front Range, which is the area up north of Denver, what they're proposing. But last month we talked about, and you see in your memo there, because there's so little money, it's not going to go very far, even with $15 million. So tax recommendation was to identify some critical projects that are going on now that could benefit from the additional funds and designate the road around those projects as the critical freight corridors. We can change them anytime we want to. So if we finish a project, well, it's no longer a critical freight corridor, but the one a mile down the road is now the critical intersection. You do one intersection at a time. So that type of approach. CDOT has a preference for that approach. And it's come to learn since the last meeting that the funding for this projects that want to use these funds must be in a statewide freight plan beginning in 2018. Projects that want to use the funding in 2016 or 17 do not have to be in a plan. CDOT because of this requirement, has begun a process to revise the state plan that currently has no projects in it. It's more of a philosophical or principle-based plan. They're going to add projects, and it'll begin to look more like our long-range plan, where we have a list of fiscally constrained projects. They're proposing right now to finish the revision to the statewide freight plan in December of next year. By that time, they will also develop the methodology on how they will select projects. So where that leaves us is that we've already identified, and plus the addition of Woodland Park, some of the critical projects that are ongoing, that are proposed in the next few years. Charter Oak Ranch Road that Victoria and you were talking about, with the funding now in 2017, would be eligible for these funds. And they've already identified $8 million that they could use that year for that project. Now, I have no idea how CDOT is going to select the projects, either before or after the state plan is approved. We haven't gotten that far in the discussion. But that's kind of where this program is at right now. CDOT would like to have this all wrapped up at the commission in October, which means that we would be coming back to you, I'd be coming back to you next month in September with a final recommendation as to what projects and what corridors would be the criticals. And I don't know, I'm still waiting from CDOT to find out how much money they would want for these other projects that we've identified here, and whether any of those would be in 2016 or 2017. If they're beyond that, then it won't make much difference this go around. CDOT's proposing or not expecting to designate the full 80 miles at this time. They're just going to pick the critical projects in 16 and 17 and designate enough road to include those projects, kind of like what we've done here.
One question I had, and I had this last time as well as I think a couple other folks in the room did too, is what criteria are you using to decide on what these projects are? Not that I don't, agree that some of these, from my knowledge, are critical freight motion. But what criteria, do you have you said you didn't know what the state's criteria was, but do you all, or does PPACG have criteria that they use to evaluate those? Like the volume of freight that goes through there is X, or there are peaks where there's congestion, or what do you use to decide which ones you put on this list?
Would you trust my gut?
Well, you're talking about a data person, so probably I'm a little leery on
Yeah.
somebody says.
No, it was the attitude, the initial response from TAC is there's not enough money to make it worth the time to develop, an involved, intricate methodology for doing this, especially since we're not going to be selecting the projects. So the initial list here was developed strictly on the knowledge of the local entity staff that said, we've got this ongoing project. It's coming up in the next few years. It's being started now. It's being designed. It's eligible for this funds. I couldn't rank out at this time which project has more freight trucks on it. Probably Charter Oak Ranch Road has the highest percentage of freight than any other road we have, because that's almost the only thing on it is freight and landscaping and grocery store distribution and a mining operation. So
The reason I raise that is because if the state has to decide on what's going to go forward, and I understand energy into a particular project, but if we can't tell them that we use this criteria to come up with this list of 4 projects, how can you compete against their projects if you're not using some kind of
quantifying information?
We
We will not have a strong position.
Yeah, I agree. So my concern would be that at least you have criteria that you use, that you can back up that project if you're going to compete.
Excellent.
It's hard to go in there to go.
Excellent point.
I think so.
Excellent point.
Other comments? Yeah.
I would tack on to what you said, that we have multiple criteria that are pressing us, including the fact we have topography. We have freight corridors that exist only because of the natural geographic land masses. And if you can't move freight down 24, you have to go try to move it across I-70, or you have to go farther south and try to move it across 50 or farther south than that overlooks Big Pass. And it's the Rocky Mountains, and you have to be able to lay out some of these natural, native, built-in issues in a way that we compare the priority in our region against the priorities in other regions, so that COG has to at least acknowledge their existence.
And Jim, some of the things you hit on now, because 24 that way, this way, or a lot of the other highways that I was looking at a while ago, because that's what I was looking at in my phone, volumes for now, what they're saying our volumes for the roads are now, which is an easy criteria for you to use as one of the things you could say, hey, listen, we have 30,000 cars per day going on this road. This is the reason why, and you show a projected of 58,000 in 2020, or 2040, whatever it was, 2040 when I was looking at that. So the 39,000 to 58,000 is a good ratio to show them, and access to you have access to accident data, how many accidents we have, what happens to this road on Old Charter Ranch Road when this happens, what happens to this road, So there's a lot of data there for you to use. I mean, I like what she's saying, is the fact that you have so much information out there that you guys have access to that you can use as your criteria. You don't have to have a you don't have to go real in-depth to, we gotta have an analyzation of this and this. It's just there, the data's there for you. That's what I was trying to look up a while ago, because I was curious how much traffic on West 24 West, and they're talking about it's gonna be 58,000 a day. And I'm going, wow, and that's a lot.
And there's not a lot of alternatives. I mean, it is what it is. Any other questions for Ken? Go ahead, Kevin.
I'm going to pile on. There are two things that in my mind are industrial and economic development kind of priorities in the region. And one is Fort Carson. I mean, that's a heavy industrial user already, and none of these really impact that. Maybe you could argue Charter Oak Ranch Road might someday if they ever open that thing. But the other is any kind of freight that deals with the airport, and none of these things sort of help that. And I would think that a project that would help either Fort Carson, which is already an heavy industrial user, and or the airport would be something that might bubble up and be some import to the state as well. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
The airport has collected data, so it's out there.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have finished all of the items that we have on our agenda, but do you all have anything you want to make sure is on our next month's meeting? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of months ago, a few of us went to look at the metro station where they were going to move it to. Is Brian around to give us kind of an update?
He escaped, that's why.
He left,
He left last month, too. Yeah, I got to speak up earlier, I guess.
You and I both serve on the steering committee.
yeah, but we haven't heard anything about the second set of public meetings, correct? So there was one set of public meetings to narrow down from major to, I think, 10, and then, yeah, but either way, I haven't heard updates on that.
Okay. Because I think by last month, they were going to get it down to 8, and then
Right.
getting
I thought it was
closer.
6, and I did email Brian, and I did not hear back, now that you say that, based on our meeting.
And we didn't have
Okay,
anything.
We'll make sure that that gets addressed. Go ahead, Kevin, I'm
I'm
right.
sorry, I thought you were looking at me. I had new glasses. I'd like to continue to, at least on a rotating basis, to get an update on the JROOS program. It seems like that had some energy, and then we lost some staff people, and now we're sort of restarting that again. But it's such an important thing to the military. I want to do that.
On the Air Force Academy one, and I'd like to have Brian Potts come in though, and give us an update on where those projects are. So.
You all received the email update that went out?
Yeah, I did.
Go ahead, Vince, you want to take a minute?
We've probably been meeting every other week, and we have two individuals that are on the committee that one is concerned about safety and the other is concerned about noise. And what they look at is the decibel levels as if you had a sound meter sitting on your house. And the way the cities look at sound measurements is day-night average sound levels. So at night, that same sound would have a greater impact than it would during the day. So there's a little bit of a conflict there. And so Brian is having sound studies done. He's actually postponed the next meetings until he gets the results of those sound studies. So we're on hold right now.
I appreciate that update. I'd like to find out what, if there were some other projects that were suggested. Okay, anything else we want to hear about? We did discuss last time that CDOT actually does support this end of I-25 with the service level. Okay, if your car gets a flat tire and stuff like that. You can, but it's got to be arranged through the state patrol. So that's what you got to do. Okay, you had something, Dave?
I was going to say it's Brewfest time again, if anybody wants to do that. Got you a couple of flyers, so that's it, second annual, and we are supported by the city of Manitou Springs.
Great, thanks for bringing
Anybody
that.
that's
Any
looking.
other drinks? This is Balloon Festival weekend.
And Parents' Weekend, so stay away from the restaurants.
Pray for the roads.
I can already feel that one.
Restaurants don't eat out. Okay, anything else? Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn? Second? All those in favor